everybody, and welcome to the Environmental Learning Center at Clackamas Community College. I'm Maggie, an educator here at the ELC, and this is week 10 of our Wetland Wildlife live stream series, where each week we've been learning about a different animal that calls the wetland their home. We've already learned about 9 different amazing species, from beavers to great blue herons to frogs and salamanders, and today we are finishing up our live stream with the amazing dragonfly. Dragonflies are super important predators that really need wetlands like here at the ELC in order to lay their eggs and to grow up into the adult dragonflies that we know and love. So today I'm super excited to be taking a look at a dragonfly I have with me right now a little bit more closely, talking about their life cycle a little bit, and then taking a dip into the water to search for perhaps some little baby dragonflies, or at least the things that they will eat when they're in the water. It's gonna be super cool. I'm so excited. Before we get started, I would like to make sure that you all have a activity sheet in front of you. This week's activity sheet is titled Darting Dragonflies, and it includes a dragonfly that you get to color, which is super fun because dragonflies come in so many amazing different colors, from yellow to blue to purple to red, which is super fun. And then you also get to fill in the blanks of a couple great fun facts. The answers to fill in these blanks with are at the bottom of the page. All right, another thing before we get started, I would like to introduce Michelle, our camera person, and also the one who will be monitoring the Zoom chat. So if you have any questions at any point during this live stream about dragonflies, please make sure to put them in the Zoom chat, and I will make time at the very end to answer them all. But alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. What exactly is a dragonfly? So a dragonfly is an insect and a really amazing predator. You might have seen one of them flying around before and catching insects in the air, which is super exciting. So I actually have a dragonfly with me right here that a friend of mine found in their backyard. It must have passed away from something, and since then we've kept it so that we can look at it nice and up close. But as you can see, dragonflies have these really great, beautiful wings that stick straight out, and these wings are super special because they actually allow the dragonfly to fly forwards, backwards, sideways, and to hover in midair. Some scientists have actually been trying to study dragonflies in hopes of making drones. If you've ever seen one of those flying robot drones before, they've been trying to copy the dragonfly because they're so good at flying. Dragonflies also have big, amazing eyes at the front of their head. And these big eyes actually have over 30,000 lenses on them. And so because of all of those different lenses, they can actually see almost all the way around their head. So they can see pretty much everything that's happening in front of them, to the side of them, and behind them, which is super cool. And they can actually see more forms of light than we can, meaning that they can see colors that even us humans can't see. So it's pretty wild to think about how a dragonfly sees the world so much differently than we do. But dragonflies also have these little legs at the front of their body that they hold in kind of this like oval basket kind of shape. So as they're flying through the air trying to catch bugs to eat, they just fly right up to the bug and just grab them with their front legs, which is a super efficient way for them. It's been found that dragonflies are super great predators and are actually able to catch a majority of what they go after, which is quite different than a lot. So if you think about like a lion, it will take them, I think they catch their prey like 2 out of 10 attempts, while a dragonfly will catch their prey 9 out of 10 attempts. So they very rarely fail at catching what they're trying to catch, which is super incredible. But if we look in this box, I don't only have an adult dragonfly with big wings. There's also another little guy in here. And this little guy is actually a younger dragonfly. It's what we call a dragonfly nymph. So adult dragonflies with their wings will go and find a nice tall piece of grass near a water's edge, and they will dip the end of their body into the water and lay eggs directly into the water. And then those eggs in the water will hatch into dragonfly nymphs. And they will swim around and eat any sort of creatures they can find in there. A lot of times it's larvae of different insects that also grow up in the water. Sometimes they'll even eat tadpoles and fish if they get big enough, which is pretty wild because insects don't usually eat fish. It's usually fish eating the insects. So that's something really unique about the dragonfly. And then once they are ready to become full adults, they will crawl out of the water onto a piece of grass or any other vegetation, and will break out of their skin and come out with these big, beautiful wings. So if you've ever seen a butterfly break out of a cocoon, it's pretty similar to that, but the dragonfly breaks out, its wings expand, and it's ready to fly around, which is super incredible. And we call that process molting, and can be seen on the life cycle slide as well. So, like I said, dragonflies will grow up in the water and eat all types of little guys that they can find in the water. And we call all those little creatures macroinvertebrates. Now, that's a big, long word, but basically, if you break it down, macro just means that it's something that we can see with our eyes. So we don't need to use any sort of microscope or anything like that to help us see it. And invertebrate means that they don't have a backbone. So us humans have a backbone, but all of these little creatures in the water do not. So I very often will go into the water searching for these macroinvertebrates because it can tell us a lot about what types of creatures live here and how healthy our water is. And so a lot of times I will go in, I will scoop up the water, and I will see different insects, but I will also see something that we call scuds, which are actually very, very tiny crustaceans. So a crustacean is something related to, well, some examples of other crustaceans are lobsters and shrimp and crawdads. And so it's kind of like we have our own very teeny tiny shrimp here at the ELC. But most of the things that I fish out of there are the younger versions of flies and mosquitoes and a bunch of other creatures. So I actually want to go into the water with you all right now and try to fish up some stuff. Let's see what we find. We might be able to find some dragonfly larvae, or maybe just what the dragonfly larva eats. But the way I do this is I, of course, put on these waders that help protect me from getting wet. And I very carefully make my way into the water. And I look very closely as to where these little creatures would probably want to be. So these creatures don't like to be out in the open where predators like fish or even dragonfly larvae could come and eat them. So I'm looking near where the vegetation is, where all the plants are, where all the shade is. There's some rocks. And I take this big net and I start to just quickly scoop through. The water falls out, and what's left is any little creatures that I found. And I keep doing this until I catch something. Oh, looks like I've got some stuff. And then I go ahead. Ooh, there's something moving around in there. I leave the water and I very quickly put them in this tray of water that I have here so that it's easier to see them and so that they stay alive, because they do need to stay in water in order to breathe. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we found. So I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of what I found in this tray. And I want you, as you're watching this, to count as many of these creatures as you can spot. Alrighty, how many creatures were you able to spot? We got a ton of stuff just from sweeping our net a couple times in the water. I was able to, thanks to this identifier card that I have of various macroinvertebrates, as we call them, that we caught quite a few really interesting things. So the first macroinvertebrate that we saw in that clip is the biggest one. And you remember it had that three-pointed tail. It had a bunch of little legs moving really fast on the side of its body. That's actually its gills. And I was able to identify that as a mayfly larva. So a mayfly is a type of fly that's common here that, very similar to the dragonfly, grows up in the water and then eventually leaves, gets wings and starts to fly around. The second creature that I saw in that clip was a damselfly larva, which is something that I can explain to you guys in a second. But a damselfly is very similar to a dragonfly and is often confused for a dragonfly. And I'll show you the differences between those two later. And then I also saw a little water beetle run by, and a couple other little creatures as well. And so these guys, finding them in the water can let us know that their adult forms are going to be around here soon. So we're probably going to see a damselfly and some mayflies around here. But it also tells us about how healthy the water is. So here on my sheet, it actually says that mayflies are not tolerant to pollution, which means that they can't live in polluted water. And so that means that our water must be pretty clean if the mayfly is growing and living here, which is super exciting. So let me go ahead, just as our last activity, explain the difference between a dragonfly and a damselfly. Might have to go back in the slides because I forgot to mention it earlier. But when I go into my backyard, I actually have a pond. And I've seen all types of both dragonflies and damselflies flying around. And for the longest time, I thought they were the same type of insect, but really they're different. So if you look at these two photos of the dragonfly and the damselfly, you can see that the dragonfly's body is a lot thicker. And also its eyes look like they're touching, right? And then if you look at the damselfly, they have a lot thinner of a body and their eyes look like they're separated. So they kind of look like a hammerhead shark. Another difference is with their wings. So the dragonfly's wings are slightly different sizes. So their front set of wings are just a little bit smaller than their back set. And also when they are perching, which is when they're not flying, so they're on a leaf or somewhere else, like resting their wings for a little bit, the dragonfly will keep its wings straight out while the damselfly will fold the wings up against their body. So my favorite way to determine if I'm looking at a dragonfly or a damselfly is when it lands, does it look like an airplane with its arms out, or does it fold its wings back? So yeah, that is the difference between those two creatures. That's so exciting that we were able to find a damselfly larva, which means that we likely also have dragonflies and others here as well. So super exciting. I want to make sure that we have time to answer your questions about dragonflies before we wrap up today. That's a great question. Someone asked, how old are they when they molt and leave the water? So it actually varies quite a bit depending on what type of dragonfly. But the super surprising thing is they spend more time in the water than they do on land. So they can spend up to 5 years in the water, swimming around, eating other bugs and tadpoles and fish. And then after those 5 years, leave the water, become adults, and then only be an adult for a couple of months. So the adult stage of their life is actually not a very big section of their life, which is so interesting. Great question. That's a great question. Someone asked, where do they hold their eggs? So I assume you mean, where are their eggs in their body? And so their eggs are within their abdomen. So the lower part of their body, and they will dip like the very end, what we would probably call the tail of the dragonfly, into the water in order to lay them. It's a great question. Someone asked, what's the average size of an adult? I actually don't know, because I think it really does vary on the species. But with the dragonfly that I showed you all that I have with me, I'd say it's only about 2 inches long. And yeah, I'm sure that it varies a bit. But great question. That's a really great question. What is the greatest predator of the dragonfly? So when they are small and swimming around in the water, bigger fish can eat them. Other types of just bigger creatures living in the water can eat them. But when they're adults, they actually spend a lot of their time flying. So they won't perch on a leaf very much at all because they're trying to fly around and catch things midair. And also so that predators can't really seem to catch them. If you keep moving at all times, they won't be able to get you. But a couple predators that have gotten them and eat them are frogs, birds, and other creatures like that. That's a good question as well. Do dragonflies bite or sting humans? That's actually a big misconception that I hadn't heard about until I started researching dragonflies a little bit more. But that is completely false. They do not have any ability to bite or sting people and are completely harmless. Well, thank you so much for all of your amazing questions. If you have any more, I recommend that you look it up, go to your local library and get some dragonfly books. And thank you so much for joining us on our amazing live stream series. And I'm so glad that you're all so curious about wildlife. But yeah, with all that, take care, get outside, and respect all those who live there. Okay, bye.